Welcome back to ChatChit. This is our Round 9 weekly wrap-up for 2025. Now, usually we start with Game of the Round, but today is different because this was the best round of football that I've had the pleasure of seeing as a fan of Australian rules football.
Round 9 delivered one of the tightest weekends in recent memory. With 8 of the 9 games decided by 15 points or less, the total margin of those 8 games was just 58 points, averaging barely over 7 points per game. We had a draw, almost comebacks, and games going right down to the wire. One of the tightest rounds of footy we've ever seen. I've got all the home teams today. Sam's got the away teams. I'm going to kick us off with Fremantle, who suffered a 14-point loss to Collingwood. So I think it was a real chance for Freo to take a scalp here, with Collingwood leaving 948 games of experience on the sidelines. Yeah. But I think they got the matchups wrong. Luke Ryan had the job on Elliott, and he almost tried to play as that extra man, try and get off your man. But it clearly didn't work. I think Elliott could have easily had 7 or 8 here. Ended up kicking 6 goals too, missing some very gettable chances in that final quarter. But Collingwood beat Freo in behind. So as soon as Freo lost the ball, trying to move the ball forward, they just almost couldn't handle the quick ball movement of Collingwood. And once the ball got up behind, Elliott was always going to get there faster than Luke Ryan. And I think it puts Longmuir under even more pressure. A star-studded midfield, star-studded defence, emerging stars in the forward line. Now in back-to-back games, going in as favourites, they'll fail to meet expectations. It puts a lot of pressure on the 2 ruckmen that they have. So they've got $2 million locked in, and it almost feels like a waste. Jackson is a far better player to me than Darcy, and either one of them is wasted in the forward line. Darcy's not a forward. Jax can play there, but he's a far better ruckman than Darcy is. And I said it last week, but I'm just going to reiterate. I think they're too safe with just the way that they play. Too many touches across the back line. Clark's a quality player, and he had a massive game today. Ryan's a quality player, and they have good players across the back line. But just the switching and not utilising their midfield power, I think they need to take more calculated risk in their game and almost risk conceding more to score more. Because I think a few weeks ago, it might have been Hayden Young in the press came out and said, we're happy to win a game scoring 70 points. Right? You shouldn't be happy winning a game scoring 70 points. You should want to kick at least over 100 points, and the defence will come with it. So that's just how I saw Freo in this game.
From Collingwood's perspective, as you mentioned, they did it with no Maynard, no De Goey, no Myercheck, no Pendlebury, and obviously no Tom Mitchell, who's been out all year. And with their best player, Nick Dacos, well held down to 18 disposals, which weren't very effective. He was well tagged. And that just shows the depth in this Collingwood squad currently. There's going to be a serious selection squeeze. A lot of those players that were out this week are going to be back. And it's going to be fascinating to see how they manage their squad. And then when you talk about the over ball use in the back line for Freo, that was contrasted by Collingwood, who had only one player with 20 plus disposals, in contrast to Freo's 6. And with Freo's 6 players that had 20 plus, that included Brayshaw with 35 plus, Sarong with 30 plus, and all of this stuff. Collingwood found a way, despite being well beaten at clearance, minus 13 in clearance and minus 28 in inside 50s. They found a way through their defense, which has been throughout the year before this game.
I think it's the number 1 defense.
It is, yeah. And through their efficiency going into forward 50, this is the real stat. Their scores per inside 50 was 65% versus Freo's 37%. It's just pure efficiency, class ball use, and experience in the forward line. Jamie Elliott just completely tearing apart the Freo defense. And one comment that I'm going to make on a specific Collingwood player is that if Max Gawn didn't exist, Darcy Cameron, I think, would be considered a superstar of the competition. I think you have a point of comparison against who I see as the best ruckman of all time in Max Gawn. But otherwise, I think the guys just behind Gawn in Darcy Cameron and Tristan Xerri, it's a level of skill from ruckman that I haven't seen before this generation. And I think Darcy Cameron, the way that he's shot out last year and then even further this year, he is absolutely exceptional against maybe, as you said, Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy, $2 million worth of ruckman go switching out against him. He just dominated both of them this week, and it was great to see.
Where do you see Collingwood this season? Are they a top 4 team?
Yeah, I see them as we're going to get into all the teams later, but I see them as probably a tied premiership favourite with Hawthorn. I'd say Hawthorn have the best firepower, and Collingwood have the finals experience along with a lot of talent as well. I see those two as the top 2 teams in the comp.
Pretty crazy to think what they've done. They only signed Houston, and the off-season they've turned themselves from outside the 8 into a premiership contender.
Completely.
I'll start with St Kilda. Now, I think there's a serious almost lack of talent. So if Messiah, Wanganeen, Malira or Sinclair don't get you in the game, who do they have that can actually rip apart a game? We know they have McRae, who can get those contested possessions and clearances, but how much damage does he do if he can't get the ball on the inside? If you had to rank their players in order, from rank 1 to rank 22, and compare that to other teams, I think they're really lacking real quality in that almost 8 to 15 mark. So we know they have a large piece of the salary cap available. They offered $17 million to Callaghan in the most recent trade period. And I feel like you can almost see that in their 22. And I'm assuming they're going to try and correct that. They've thrown offers at De Koning as well in the upcoming trade period.
Yeah, you got a lack of talent. Throw it at a ruckman when you already have an elite ruckman when he's fit in your team. I don't know about this.
100%. Yeah. And Ross Lyon's game plan, we can all see it. It worked to perfection against Freo last week. Where it's just all in your defense. Can you progress the ball slowly? And if you can get it up the back, can we go quickly? But when it doesn't work and teams are able to limit the damage that guys like Nasai, Wangan, Malira and Sinclair can do, I just really don't think St Kilda have answers, and they don't have a way to stop a powerhouse midfield like Carlton did. And Carlton didn't have guys who got massive disposals. A lot of them chipped in with around 20 to 25, but there's just no one. There wasn't anyone in St Kilda's midfield to go with them. They had young guys like Hugo Garcia, Boxall in the midfield trying to go with the superstars of the competition, and it just didn't work out.
Yep. See, from a Carlton perspective, they really won the contested battle. There was nothing flashy in that midfield, as you said, no one putting up crazy numbers or really any big highlights, except they just have hard runners and tough ball winners in there. You've got Hewitt and Cripps, who are just always going to be tough and really, really difficult opponents. And then you got Sam Walsh, who just runs all day. I think they play him on the outside, so there might be this perception that he's not the toughest midfielder, except I completely disagree, because he just runs all day and he's really, really hard to go with. And then you could combine that with Adam Chera and then Tom De Koning, who's basically a fifth midfielder with his skill level. They're really, really hard to beat in the contest. The contrast to that is I don't think St Kilda are the best team in the comp at the moment. And you contrast this with the Carlton's performance against Adelaide last week. What that exposed is that they might be a bit of a one-trick pony in terms of their midfield dominance. And when they're sort of suppressed at the source, I don't really know how much Carlton have. So against teams that are more dynamic than St Kilda, I'm keen to see what Carlton can bring now that they're finding a little bit of form. One other point that I'll make is that Harry Mackay, really, really glad to see him back at his best. Just reminds you that he is one of the best, if not the preeminent aerial threat in the league.
And that goal he kicked at the end just to seal the game.
Yeah, just the way he just clunks contested marks against really strong opponents like Callum Wilkie, who really never gets beaten, like it's nothing. It's awesome to see him back playing his best footy. You just want to keep seeing the two of the most exciting tall forwards in Curnow and Mackay playing together.
I like it. Twin Towers.
Yep.
Next game I got Melbourne. So they've found some form after an 0-5 start to the season. This was a real test, and they were up to the challenge for the first 3 and a bit quarters before Hawthorn just went nuts at the end. So Gawn went about his business and is clearly charging to a potential 8th All-Australian. I think Petrarca was best on ground, in my opinion, in the first half, and then looked after. Clearly there was a discussion at half-time about his damage. Clayton Oliver's an interesting one. Like, where does he stand?
They were playing him kind of as a tagger.
He was tagging Newcombe in the game, and it was... Simon Goodwin was interviewed before the game, and he actually said that Clayton Oliver was going to be tagging Newcombe, so it was a plan going in. And he did quite a good job, but you don't spend $1.7 million a year on a tagger. No, let's be honest. Like, my question is it time to try and like maybe pay some of that cash and take it out of the salary and almost just move him on? Like, we know Geelong were interested in the last trade period, that potentially lost some value. It's just interesting. He didn't have too much damage in the game, obviously limited Newcomb's damage. but they are lacking stars in that team. You can't really waste him.
I agree. I'd argue that Clayton Oliver, just because of what we know he can produce when he's at his best, and the fact that he still is in his prime years, I'd say it's worth keeping him just for that chance that he does find his best footy, which I think is very possible. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense that he's nowhere near his best at the moment, and he could easily just come back to it next year. But definitely possible if there's something that they see inside their training grounds.
Well,
that
I guess
they don't
it's
like.
just if they believe that
Yeah.
he can actually get back to his best, if he's worth paying that sort of money. But elsewhere, the 19-year-old Harvey Langford is a genuine star. Even without his 3 goals today, he provides a marking target on the wing. I can definitely see him as an inside midfielder in the future. Was only involved in 21% of centre bounce attendances, but I think that number will probably increase in the coming weeks. He's currently the second favourite to win the Rising Star as well.
Who would you have right now, Levi Ashcroft or
I
him?
think it's got to be Levi Ashcroft. Just game after game, he keeps putting up numbers. But I don't think there's a big gap between the two, and it's nice to see that there's real competition in the Rising Star this year. I think clearly Melbourne will target a key forward in the off-season. I mean, elsewhere, Bowie's having a breakout season. Salem's, we know the quality. Midfield, we know the quality. Best ruck in the competition. But it's no use when their forward line is uncompetitive, and it showed today.
Yep. From a Hawthorn side, I thought this was a very professional display. They came up against a hungry Melbourne side, started 0-5, now on a 3-game win streak, feeling confident and fiery, and Hawthorn sort of mitigated the damage when Melbourne were on top and then overran them with a bit of class in the fourth quarter and a bit of running. A comment that I want to make is that Jack Gunston's rebirth as a footballer continues to be one of...
I was going to say third in the Coleman as well.
Yeah, having missed a game as well, or missed a game or two. It's an absolute spectacle every week. You just love to see it. And he just is an absolute master. Not one of the best athletes of the key forwards in the comp anymore, but he just finds an incredible amount of space in the forward line. He seems to always have 2 or 3 steps on his defender when he's leading, and he takes his chances. This week he was 3 and 4, but he's just been taking his chances at a really high rate generally. And I don't have anything more to say other than I still see Hawthorn as the team to beat this season, maybe along with Collingwood.
Isn't it just a testament to what quick ball movement can do?
Yep.
I mean, a guy that looked towards the end of his career is potentially having a crack at the Coleman because of how quickly Hawthorn can get the ball in and give him opportunities.
Completely.
I'll move on to Essendon. So there's a real pattern we're seeing with Essendon. In the last 2 weeks, they've led the game by 4 or more goals, and then kicked a combined 4 goals in both second halves. 4 goals in 4 quarters of footy is just not a game that's going to hold up. So they completely go away from their game in the first half, and they just try to hold on. So it reminds me of Jose Mourinho in his Chelsea days. So can we get out of the blocks really quickly, score early, and then defend for our lives and just hold on? And I just don't think that's going to stack up, especially when they come up against more talented teams, more talented forward lines especially. They need to have a plan when Merritt gets tagged, because I think it's inexcusable for a team to go into a game against Essendon and not have a plan for Merritt. Still contributed with two massive goals, but he was kept out nicely by James Jordan. They currently sit in the 8, but I can't see them holding on to that spot. They've had quite an easy draw this season so far, but they found one in Zach Reid. I mean, it's been a couple seasons now with injuries, and they knew he was going to be that guy, and he's finally showing it.
Are you going to say the stat or am I?
I'm going to say the stat. He hasn't had a goal kicked on him since round 2, and he's well on his way, if not already, to one of the best centre-half backs in the competition. And he's great by foot as well. He just doesn't seem to be out of place, even with missing so much footy. So yeah, scary things to come.
I can't see a flaw in Zach Reid's game. Already a dominant force in the air, just makes good decisions, clean on the ground for like a relatively young key back, still trying to gain some muscle. Like, he's just got it all. Clearly an incredible talent, and to be doing this when he's had such an interrupted young career is, I don't really get it, to be honest. And then something I'd add on Essendon is that I'd love, as a Sydney fan, to say, Essendon were just great today. Swans playing good footy, but Essendon were just the better side. I think the Swans really beat themselves, and Essendon really, as you said, didn't do enough scoring to win it themselves. I think it was the Swans that did it for them. Now I'm going to take 2 main lessons out of this performance as a Swans fan. The first is that the Swans are just not playing 4 quarters of footy. There's not been one game this year where the Swans have played 4 quarters that are respectable. There's always been close to a half and at the very least a quarter where the Swans are just completely switched off and there's not enough pressure and not enough quality. And the second point I want to take away is that the Swans' goal kicking lost them this game, and it's lost them at least 3 games this season. In this game, the Swans had 7 more scoring shots than Essendon, 16 more inside 50s, and still found a way to lose. The positive is that the pressure was good for 3/4 of the match. The defense was really good. Tom McCartan was quashing a lot of Essendon attacks. Rampy was good. Blakey was good. The defense was all very solid, and the contested work was solid. But bad kicking is bad footy.
It's the hope that kills you. We were watching that game together and we really thought the Swans were charging and they probably should have won that game. But time after time, going inside 50. Joel Hamling had that chance at the end where he handballed backwards and they missed an easy one. And I mean, it just sort of spiraled after that. I mean, conceding 3 50-metre penalties in the first 5 minutes of the game, conceding 3 goals, so that doesn't exactly get you off on the right foot.
My goat, Aaron Francis, almost kicked an absolute screamer just running through that defence.
Still confused how you can possibly miss that.
Just a 1 metre out straight in front, but he just hit the post.
We'll move on to the goal where I've got Gold Coast. They were desperate for this win, or this sort of win, a scalp over a premiership contending team.
Yep.
But don't they look ready to fire? It would be hugely disappointing for this club to not win a flag in the next 1 to 3 years. I mean, Damien Hardwick said they had 80% of the premiership team in the room, and I think he was right.
Completely correct.
I think we can see that now. And he's really starting to make his mark on Gold Coast. All aspects of their game stood up. Really strong defensively, really strong in the midfield. Even without Raoul's influence in this game, they're able to stand up. And there are stars everywhere, and they have so many players that can win a game by themselves. We saw Humphrey a few weeks ago, Rioli as well, King, the Coleman leader, Anderson and Miller keep it ticking over. I just say beware of Gold Coast.
Completely agree. If you look at the ladder in terms of where we're viewing them, they've got a game in hand, and if they were to win their extra game, they'd be top of the ladder on percentage. So they're keeping up with the very top of the league, not just trying to scramble finals this year, which is a great thing to see.
Yeah.
From a Bulldogs perspective, it's quite the opposite of what I said about the Sydney-Essendon game. I think this was both teams playing great footy, both teams really dynamic, creating good chances. Maybe the defence could have been a lot better from the Bulldogs, which I'll touch on in a second, but I think there were a lot of positives to take out. This was a battle between arguably the 2 best midfield groups in the AFL right now, and I think Gold Coast just slightly got the better of them. But I think the Bulldogs can hold their head up high that they were just beaten by the better side on the day. If there was one thing that was exposed, it was their defensive unit, which we know lacks firepower and high-end talent, especially when you compare it to their stacked midfield and completely stacked forward line when everyone is fit. The Bulldogs conceded 31 scoring shots, which is a long way above average and the most that they've conceded in a game this year. And I think given how much talent is going around this Bulldogs list, I would be experimenting with different options at the back to see if they can strengthen the defence somehow. It's unfortunate that Ugle-Hagan and Sam Darcy are both unavailable right now, but if they were both available, I think it would be so interesting to have a try of Aaron Norton down back, because that's where he was as a youngster, as a young talent. We know that he can play there. Obviously, he's played his best footy in the forward line, but it would definitely be worth tinkering with just to see if they can have more of a dominant player in that back line, crashing packs. But I think the Bulldogs can hold their heads up high.
Scary having so much salary cap sitting on the sidelines and you still perform like this. Cody Waitman as well is another out that I think he's out for quite a while. Next game was the Showdown, and this game just always seems to deliver. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's like a margin of average of 8 or something in the last 4 showdowns or something crazy like that.
Best fixture in footy.
It feels that way. And I think we probably need a derby round as well. I think that'd be awesome. Just the Q Clash, the Showdown, Battle of the Bridge.
The argument against that is that you want to have those interesting games spread throughout the season so that it doesn't lose interest. They try to make sure that they have, the Anzac Day round and there's no real big rivalries in that round so that they can, split up the attention.
I see, just like a highlight game.
Yeah.
It's fair enough. But the game was neck and neck the entire time until Adelaide took a small lead going into the final 10 minutes. But credit to Port for not backing off and almost to stealing the win from right under Adelaide's noses. But I'm not quite sure exactly where Port stand, and I can't quite pinpoint where I have them finishing this season. I mean, Butters went about his business. Rosie won the medal in a losing team, which is very impressive. Jason Horne-Francis played a massive role as well. And if they continue to do this every week, then I can see Port making a charge and potentially finishing in that 7th or 8th spot. And if they keep getting wins, this is the trio that's gonna continue to take them there. It's just interesting because Georgiades doesn't have a lot of help in that forward line, and he's a real target, and teams are starting to obviously realise that. They stick their best defender to him. They realise that he's going to be the number one target going inside forward 50. But almost who else? I mean, they've tried Jason Horne-Francis spend some time down there, but I just don't think there's enough in that forward line to, like, Ollie Lord isn't gonna win you a game of footy, and I think just that lack. They're sorted down the back. I think they've got a good enough defence to hold up. They've got I'm not saying premiership winning team, but just throughout the season potentially make a push for the 8. They have a good enough defence, I feel. Midfield, they clearly have good enough midfield, struggling with the ruck. They don't really have an established ruckman leading the team. But just in that forward line, there isn't enough targets, and there aren't enough guys that can really rip your heart out and rip your game apart for them to continue winning games.
Yep, I'd agree. They've got up there with Gold Coast and Bulldogs as the dominant midfields in the league, but they don't have the strongest forward line, and as you said, not the defense is maybe holding up a little bit better, but not that much better. So from an Adelaide side, I thought this match showed us a lot of maturity from a young Adelaide side, especially at the bookends of the ground, as opposed to Port Adelaide. The midfield was well beaten. Minus 27 clearances and minus 21 inside 50s in a win is basically unheard of, but that's what happened. So, we can get to the Adelaide midfield in a second, but just to touch on their defence, not highly rated, not many big names, but they are just withstanding some barrages. And I love to watch it. There's guys that we've highlighted this year. Josh Worrell, Mitch Hinge have both taken huge leaps this year amongst some other players. And in terms of the midfield, well, they have to prove that this won't be a pattern against the dominant midfields of the competition. The two big stars in there, Jordan Dawson and Isaac Rankin, had 14 disposals and 16 disposals respectively. And that's just not enough footy to have the impact that they need to have on the game. I expect them to both respond next week. But they were very much saved by the rest of the side. I expect that Adelaide will have the biggest ladder improvement from last year to this year. As a side note, they're currently up 10 spots, from 15th to 5th. And so this is kind of what people expected from Adelaide last year, and then they had a very disappointing season. And now we're seeing them do it. Put some of those explosive ball users to good use. Isaac Rankin in the midfield, Jordan Dawson with another year of experience, and then all that forward firepower that we're seeing. And they're in a really exciting team, sitting at 5th place on the ladder.
Did you see the Mark Keane mark at the end? Is there a chance that could win Mark of the Year?
I'd love it too.
All I'm saying, running back to the pack to take a mark to win your side the game. I mean, Leah Barry-esque. I mean, not in the same sort of time of the season.
Yep.
But, I mean, to take a mark like that, just backing back, people are going to come right through the back of you, and to clunk it to win the game for your side.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition to our next game and next team that we want to touch on. Should there be a Tackle of the Year award?
Yeah, all I'm going to say is Tom Brown, and I'm so happy I got Richmond, because is that the moment of the season so far?
Yeah.
I mean, Richmond themselves have done a really good job in keeping some of that experienced core with them, like Vlosten, Lynch, Taranto, Hopper, Nank, etc. But these are the sorts of wins that you need, and especially for Tom Brown. I mean, he came straight over to interview him afterwards. They talked in the change rooms. They said they said it's going to be played on all of the screens in every video review game, and this is how you want to play. This is what you want to. This is what the team's got to be like. You fight till the end. I mean, what a ridiculous chase down tackle, and I've never heard the commentators go so crazy. I mean, this is why we love footy. We had just had, I think it was 16th versus 18th play, and it was an absolute thriller. 14 lead changes. But I like that they want to play exciting footy. Doesn't matter the opposition. They don't mind getting beaten. They know where they stand. But the game plan doesn't change. And I think, I talked about earlier, but I think Freo could take a leaf out of Richmond's book at moving the ball. It's fast, progressive, exciting, and it's clearly getting results. There was zero expectations for Richmond this season. I mean, we talked about it in our podcast before the season started. Potentially, Richmond could win 0 games this season.
And they had a list where it could have happened if they played a certain type of footy.
100%, and they have 3 wins on the board already. So they're outperforming everybody's initial thoughts on how we thought their season would go, and congratulations to them.
Completely. From a West Coast side, this was an incredibly entertaining game, but for West Coast fans, this is crushing, honestly. This was the one fixture that they were expected to have a good chance to win and possibly be favourites going into the year, and then going into the game as well. And now it's come and gone, and they are 0-9. And it's hard to see where they're going to find a win. I don't want to target Tom Gross, but I don't know if he got much sleep on Sunday night.
The sub just came on as well, fresh legs.
I want to say he did a lot of good things as the sub, didn't have a lot of time to make an impact, but got a lot of the ball and was getting it forward for West Coast. Really sad to see that. Didn't want it to be him. But yeah, it took a little bit too long with the ball, and Tom Brown just, the ferocity just got him. Not much to say for West Coast apart from that these are dark times, especially considering how low it's been over the last few years. To see that they're still sort of moving downwards. They're still...
haven't hit rock bottom yet.
Yeah, they're still moving downwards in their rebuild, it looks like. Losing players over the off-season. And then we see them 0-9 now. Not good to see.
I'll get straight into the next one, Geelong. So I love how Chris Scott moves the magnets around. You're not really sure where Dempsey's playing. Is he a winger? Is he a forward? GWS tried to send Himmelberg to him, which was unsuccessful as he kicked 2 goals. I think he's a better player than we initially thought. I know he won the Rising Star, but I think he's almost better than that. And I'd love to see Jeremy Cameron's heat map. I haven't quite had a look at it, but he was in the centre bounce at times. He played on the wing. He played centre half forward. He took intercept marks in the back line, and he's such a tough matchup to get right. And he influences the game so much, no matter where he is. Drifts all the way back to receive the ball off a kick out, and he's really tough to beat in the air. He's really mobile for his size. So we saw that one goal he kicked a snap from was 50 meters. I think it was in the final quarter, just roving the pack. You don't see guys his size roving the pack, kicking a snap from 50 meters.
I think I would not be able to refute an argument that he's the best player in the league. I'm a Bontempelli guy, except I really could not argue with anyone that says Jeremy Cameron is the best AFL player in the league.
Scary. You'd think he'd probably kick a lot more goals when he had Tom Hawkins and he could almost just sit there. If he could sit in the forward line, imagine how many more goals he'd kick. He's so valuable everywhere on the ground. But ultimately, inaccurate kicking cost Geelong 11 goals, 17 behinds just isn't good enough. And some very gettable chances as well. Stengel with 2 goals, 4 behinds. Himself and Blitzarves missing huge chances in the final term to potentially win them the game. But I don't think there's anything to worry about for Geelong. They clearly missed Jack Henry and Tom Stewart in the back line today. And I assume you're going to tell us who got hold of that back line.
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you that GWS have won 5 straight games at GMHBA.
You don't hear that very often.
It's an insanely prestigious record to have, given Geelong have been competing for a premiership all 5 of those games, and they are known as one of the most dominant home teams in the league, along with your Brisbanes and maybe your Sydneys at times. But over the last few weeks, the Orange Tsunami has looked like the Orange Ripple. And I think we saw the tsunami come back this week. Not sure what it was. Maybe it's a Kingsley spray. Maybe it's a Toby Green sideways kick to the face for each player. But GWS looked back. This was an incredibly high-quality game of football, maybe the highest quality game of the round from both sides. And the best player on the ground for GWS was Jogan. Jesse Hogan absolutely got a hold of Geelong, as you said. Such an organised defensive unit, but they could not do anything about Jesse. He just is so crafty as a forward, has the stickiest mitts going around. He's not going to take huge, towering contested marks with athleticism, but he just knows how to find the pocket in the pack and read the ball out of the air, maybe better than anyone. And maybe the only other guy that can do it as well as him is in the GWS backline, Sam Taylor. So we know they have talent all over the ground, and when they start finding that footy, this is what they can do. I think everyone has known that this form that GWS has been in was not going to last, that they are going to be premiership contenders at their best, and this is what we saw. One other player to highlight is Tom Green, who I think has become quite underrated over the last year or so. Maybe because there was so much hype around him. He was like a heavy Brownlow favourite going into last season, and then I guess didn't get close to the Brownlow. And maybe expectations are a little bit too high now. He is coming first in the competition for disposals per game and first in the competition for contested possessions per game. And we've seen him, I think, add to his ball use a lot more composure than he had a year or two ago, where he was just, a wrecking ball in that midfield. So I think he's an absolute star who should be considered in all Australian teams come the end of the year.
I think he's also added a bit of goal kicking to his game. He seems to be popping up with a goal or two each game. But what a bailout when you can have guys that can take contested marks all over the field. I mean, the amount of contested marks, I don't remember the stat, I think it was 8 in the final quarter or something that GWS took. Just guys, it can take a pack mark, take the pressure off. I mean, Hogan's a dream having anyone's team. He's second in the column by 2 goals and played 2 less games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous numbers. But move on to the last game, potentially game of the round. There were so many options to pick from. But, I mean, it was the unlikely draw between North Melbourne and Brisbane. So North played arguably their best game of the year to draw with the premiership contenders and probably should have won as well.
First versus 17th, it should be said.
Yeah. I mean, the AFL, right?
Yeah.
Came storming home in the 4th quarter, but couldn't capitalise on some of their chances, which has sort of been their season so far. Their last 3 weeks have been plagued with missed chances in the 4th, and I think it's just a matter of time for North Melbourne to get one of these over the line. And I think it gives them some much-needed confidence this draw, and to hopefully get the wins start ticking over. They had a game a couple weeks ago against Port Adelaide, which had they kicked straight in the final quarter, it was lucky. They could have got this game over the line. Some positives. Wardlaw is high praise, but he reminds me a lot of Patrick Dangerfield.
Works his arse off. But how aggressive he is running through stoppage. He doesn't care who he goes through. He just really needs to get that ball. Yep. He's a real want for the ball, and you love seeing that in a player. Sherry's making a real case for an All-Australian berth, especially in that final quarter. And it's a theme in their previous games. Once he works the ruckman over, he and the North midfielders dominate clearance and really get their game going. So you'll notice in the final quarter of North games, they'll really start to storm home once he starts to dominate. But overall, it was a missed chance for their drought-breaking win, but a major confidence boost nonetheless. I've got a great fact, Aiden.
Okay.
Maybe one of the better ones in this episode. Brisbane are obviously coming first on the ladder, and they have the worst percentage out of the teams in the top 8. Which you wonder how that happens. But this season, I think what that kind of indicates is they've been a very sort of professional side. They're just going about their work and getting over the line, and is only really going at full pelt when they absolutely need to. I've been a bit worried about it watching them play, where they've been a bit fortunate to win some of these games. And I think if that way of playing gets them to a top 4 spot, then all power to them. But I think that this draw against a struggling North side, who did play very well, but I do think that it'll be a bit of a wake-up call that they're going to have to play better in order to be in the top 4 this year, or if they want to be getting a home preliminary final. But really, if they want to be going back-to-back and utilising this premiership window further, they're going to have to play better football and be hungrier. That's all I've got to say about Brisbane, because they're top of the ladder, getting it done, and this was sort of a blip along the road. But now we're going to jump into our top 5 players of the round, and let me tell you, I'd say this some weeks, but this was definitely the hardest it's been to make. I'll start us off with my number 5, and it's a player returning from last week, Ed Richards. I think he's been the best midfielder in the competition this year. I think he's just such a smooth operator, ball winner, works hard off the ball as well. He's got the most score involvements in the competition, 3 goal assists and a goal this week with 31 disposals. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm not going to say too much about my number 5. I had Zach Reed, and we talked about him in the game as well. He was absolutely huge in getting Essendon home, and we talked about how their defence was the way they were going to win that game, and he was a massive part of that, along with Andy McGrath, who we didn't really talk about earlier for Essendon. Yep,
I was desperate to give Zach Reed more recognition, so I'm happy you had him in there. At my number 4, I've got Jack Crisp. Had his highest rated game of his AFL career, but in terms of the eye test, he was just running all day, clean with the ball, led the game in contested possessions despite Collingwood being dominated in the contested possession. He was just a one-man force for the Collingwood midfield, and came second in the game for tackles as well and kicked 2 important goals to get Collingwood across the line. We talk about how everything was going against Collingwood this week, and Crisp was one of those players that just stood up.
What a way to return after the heartbreaking miss after the final siren the week before.
Yep.
Item at number 3, so I got him at number 4. I had Tristan Sherry.
Yep.
So I talked about him just before, but he's just doing it week after week now. He had 12 clearances and 7 score involvements, and a lot of that happened in the final quarter. The way he works over ruckmans and really gives the advantage to his North midfielders, it's just really, really incredible to see. Most all of his possessions are usually contested, and he had a massive impact in the game.
Awesome. My number 3, it's defender recognition time. James Sicily, one of the very best defenders in the league.
Struggled this year so far, I feel.
Completely. Putting it into that context as well, to see him perform how he has the last couple of weeks, it's been better, especially his ball use, which is, I'd argue he's been the best ball using defender in the competition over the last couple of years in terms of key defenders, and it's sort of been lackluster this year, but absolutely back now it seems. And along with that 87% efficiency and launching the Hawthorn attacks as he's known to do this week, 3 contested marks, and just was a huge part late in the game of getting Hawthorn across the line and getting their attack going from the back.
It's good to see him playing some good footy again. My number 3 was Jack Crisp.
Yep. My number 2, and I think it's we're going to have the same top 2, unfortunately.
Feels that way.
It's Jamie Elliott for me. It ties his career high for goals.
Could have been more as well.
And it could have been more. Found pockets of space against an All-Australian defender. 2-time All-Australian defender in Luke Ryan, who, as you mentioned earlier, I don't think gave Jamie Elliott enough credit. And then if that was the case in the first quarter or 2, then he started paying attention, but Jamie Elliott just had his number on the day.
I like it. I had Jamie Elliott in number 2 as well. I think we've talked about it enough, but I think our both number 1 will be Jesse Hogan. 7 goals against Geelong.
Yeah.
Almost one. I know he had people around him. Tom Green was huge. Sam Taylor was huge. But to kick 7 goals away from home to basically win the game for your team, it is massive. And it's also what he did around the ground as well. He went behind the ball in the dying moments, and you could really see the leadership. He was commanding people. You go here, you go there. He took massive contested marks on the wing to give his team a bit of relief. He's kicked 25 goals, 5 this season, which is ridiculous numbers. Kicked 7 goals, won this game. Yep. He just kicks so straight, game after game. And it's also the team play as well. I know I just mentioned it, but blocking for Cadman, for example, it's not just him or nothing. He's really happy for other guys to take a bit of the limelight.
I love how much he shows what footy IQ and just making intelligent decisions constantly can do for you. He's the best goal kicker in the league right now, Coleman medal winner, and averaging the most goals this year, and he's not a super athletic player. Not super quick, not super athletic, but he's just skilled and incredibly, incredibly intelligent. As I said earlier, he just reads the play as well as anyone and just got a complete hold of Geelong today. They couldn't make a plan for him.
I like it. We're going to move straight into the footy pyramid next, and let me tell you, it was another tough one to make. I have one out, and it's Lachie Neale. Had a tough game, but there are so many guys rivaling for these top 15 spots. I'll go straight into the 5th tier. Tristan Sherry is returning to the pyramid. Has had a couple of really good games in a row. Wiedering is going to hold his spot. Jesse Hogan as well is going to come into the pyramid. And I know he's not leading the Coleman, but he's played 2 games less, and for me, he's the best key forward in the competition at the moment. Brayshaw's going to hold his spot in the pyramid, and Sam Taylor's going to hold his spot in the pyramid. Moving up into the 4th tier, Gawn moves up a tier. 2 ruckmen in the pyramid, I think, for the first time ever, and I think it's 100% deserved.
You'd argue Max Gawn should be higher, or I'd argue Max Gawn should be higher.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 ruckmen in the All-Australian team come the end of the year, the way it's going at the moment. Cripps moves down a tier into the 4th tier. Didn't have a bad game, but there is so much competition for spots. Merritt is going to move down a tier. I know he kicked 2 goals, but again, same reason. And Isaac Rankin's going to hold his spot. Moving into the 3rd tier, Liberatore moves up. He was ridiculous in that game. Just went about his work again. Ed Richards moves up. He's now sitting in the 3rd tier. And Isaac Heaney moves down. Had one of his more quiet games when you really thought he could rip that game apart. Moving into the 2nd tier, Dacos is off the top of the pyramid. moves down, really struggled with the tag, couldn't beat it, and was ineffective in the game today. Zach Butters is going to move up, just went about his business again. He just keeps ticking it over as he comes back into this Port team. And we have a new leader. Marcus Bontempelli. It was probably only a matter of time, but he continues to go about his work. You thought maybe he had a quiet game, but a goal 28 is still huge. That's 3 Bulldogs midfielders for me inside the top 6 players in the competition, which is just scary.
You know, there's a TikTok I saw today which I think really reflects how well Bontempelli's performing at the moment, which is a guy from Melbourne who was a donkey voter, and he voted for Marcus Bontempelli as Prime Minister. And I think you really can't argue with that decision. As I said to Aiden, they say that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if he approaches leadership of this country the way he approaches leadership of that Bulldogs midfield, I mean, put him at the helm.
I had no arguments with this TikTok. We're going to move straight into the power rankings.
We start off with the bottom 3 teams, which remain unchanged for quite a few weeks now. You almost want to just set them there. You almost want to just staple them in there. Next up, St Kilda in 15. And I think it's just the lack of ball movement, the lack of scoring, which brings them down here in 15th, and they sit 12th on the ladder. Next up is Essendon, and this might look silly. Oh, they have a game in hand. They're 8th on the ladder, but I have them 14th on the power rankings. They have not beaten a team this year inside the top 10 on the ladder. They have a percentage of 90, and I think they were extremely lucky to get across the line against Sydney. I know that's a very harsh assessment, but I think that if there is a team whose ladder place is lying right now, it is the Essendon Bombers.
They play 4 teams in the next 5 weeks inside the top 8.
I reckon they lose all 4. Next up is Fremantle, who, along with St Kilda, maybe in contrast to St Kilda, I think there's a lot more talent on the list, and they've got a much more developed list, but it's the style of footy they're playing. Justin Longmire has to no longer stick to his guns. There needs to be more speed in this team. Next up, Melbourne in 12th, who continue their really good run of form. I'm really happy with how they played against Hawthorn. It was just a complete premiership favourite that took care of them in the 4th quarter. But Melbourne should hold their heads up high. Next up, Sydney, who made a jump last week and were brought back down to earth. As I said earlier, bad kicking is bad footy. There's enough reinforcements back now that we're no longer blaming injuries. Next up, Carlton, number 10, and I believe that this is the only team. What were they last week, Aiden? I've got them moving down with a win, I believe.
They were in 10th.
Oh, no, okay. Week. They keep their spot with a win, and it's just because of the nature of the games this week and the fact that there were teams that took bigger scalps and they beat a St Kilda side that I wasn't too impressed with. Next up is Port Adelaide in 9th, who moved down 1 spot in a tight loss. It's stiff. The game could have gone either way, as most showdowns seem to go, except I'm just moving them down because there are teams that just got really big scalps this week. And one of those teams is GWS, who move up 3 spots. As I said, the Orange Tsunami might be back. We know they have one of the best teams in footy when they're firing, and I really do think that they're still a top 4 contender for the premiership. Next up, Adelaide. Now, what a big win that was. Allows them to keep their spot in the power rankings, but in terms of the ladder position, that is just such a valuable win in an enormous game. The Bulldogs in 6, also holding their spot with, I think, a really solid performance. Next up, Geelong, who drop out of that top 4. They're now sitting on 5 wins, 4 losses. They haven't really played a really bad game this year. Been a lot of tight losses out of those 4 losses, but there are teams that are really impressing and are getting results more often than Geelong are. One of those being Gold Coast, who jump into 3rd, with Brisbane dropping to 4th. Now, Brisbane sitting 1st on the ladder, as I said earlier, might have gotten away with a couple. They're the reigning premiers, I understand. They're not playing with that same level of need and hunger as some other teams, and we know that they have that extra gear. But with this draw against North Melbourne this week, I'm going to drop them to 4 and going to give Gold Coast some recognition for the unbelievable footy that they've been playing.
Massive game Thursday night against Hawthorn. They're at home as well at TIO Stadium, which I believe they're like 6 from 6 in the last 6 games or something crazy like that.
Yep. And then the top 2 stay the same. Collingwood, who are just getting it done no matter the circumstances this year. And then Hawthorn hot on their tail as the most exciting team going around.
I like it. And I feel like we're starting to see a real top 8 starting to establish themselves. Obviously, we talked about Essendon, how they're a win and a win takes them inside the 8, but really just doesn't feel that way. Remember, the power rankings is vibes as well.
Yeah. The vibe's not there with Essendon. The vibe's there with the Orange Tsunami.
We'll see all of the next one.